Hey folks, this is a quick video just to introduce the idea of the Reloved Guitars adjustable tusk nut. Here's a I'm missing the piece. Here's a standard tusk nut, as you can see, good old-fashioned piece of gear. Nice standard looking thing that you might put on an Epiphone or something for a three-a-side tuner arrangement. What's great about it is it's made of tusk, and therefore the strings go through the slots really smoothly. And so the sort of priority really is to try and keep the, if you're using tusk, is to try and keep the original slots intact. Let me just use my zoom in camera here. Pow! So looking at close up, yeah. These slots are made in the factory, and ideally we want to keep them in really good nick. The only problem is when you come to put a new nut on a three-a-side type guitar, the challenge is you've got to get the first fret action, this little bit down here, to such a perfect height, right? To get it to play beautifully well, you want a really beautifully low first fret action. That's a secret to an easy to play guitar. Now you can see this one's already got one of these nuts fitted, but the trouble is, if you choose to use something like tusk, you have to do as much as you can to get the nut cut down from the underside first to get it to the exact give the exact right first fret action. But the problem is you can't get it exact by cutting from underneath. If you go too close, you end up cutting to fraction too much and you've lost it. Then you have to shim it, and the only way you're going to actually guarantee the exact first fret action that you want is to cut downwards, and that sort of risks putting your nut files in the beautiful tusk slots that have been made for you in the factory and that you really want to preserve at all costs. However, we say all costs, but the truth is that perfect first fret action is what we're aiming for at all costs. So it used to be that I would fit a bone nut, for example, and then I would carefully cut down the slots until we had exactly the right first fret action, and then we'd make sure that they were wide enough and the strings wouldn't bind, and that was the best bet. However, then what happened was Gibson made a mistake with their Les Paul. They brought out a Les Paul with let's see if I can show you this. They brought out a Les Paul with should I keep this running? Do I keep this running? Yeah, they brought out a Les Paul. Hold on, I'll show you what they did. This is my attempt to move things around in flight. Oh, look at that. They brought out a Les Paul, and they decided to overcome the age-old Gibson problem. So what they did was they fitted a sort of brass cradle that looked a bit like this, badly drawn out, okay. And this was the clever thing they put on the new Gibson Les Paul. And the purpose was, let's do it right. In that they fitted, how did they do this? This is really badly drawn. Excuse me. They basically put some slots in the back there, like that. Obviously, I couldn't see that, like that. Badly drawn. Anyway, so there were slots that the strings would go through. But it was designed to put a unit in the middle, which acted, I guess this is a kind of, maybe it was like this, a kind of 0 fret arrangement in the middle. So what happened was you had the strings come up through the back of this thing, over the top of the 0 fret, and off down the business, right, like that. And this bit was brass, and the good thing about it is that in the unit, I can't really show it here, but they put a couple of grub screws to adjust, so you could raise it up and down to the exact position you wanted. Now the problem with this being brass is that it immediately notched as soon as it was even put together. So you basically got you've got some notching happening here on the brass insert, and that notching made a horrible kind of clicky sound and so on. So I think what Gibson did was that they ended up replacing this bit, or maybe the whole bit, but I think certainly this bit, with titanium, which again I guess ended up being an expensive alternative. I'm just going to put you back on your other little cradle. Look how easy this has become. Instead of fumbling away. Come on. Thank you. So they found an alternative by getting a titanium replacement. However, in the meantime, Graph Tec came out with a really clever idea, and they come up with this insert that was designed from Tusq material, but it was designed to fit, I don't know how well we can see this, it was designed to fit, drop into the original cradle that Gibson had made for its original piece. And so instead of having a 0 fret and running the risk of notching, what Tusq did was recreate a sort of traditional nut thing, because what they realized is a lot of people who buy Gibsons think that this spacing of the string slots, you know, the angling of the string slots, is what causes the out of tune problem. Well, it isn't. It's the quality of the nut slots that usually causes the out of tune issues. So with Tusq, they knew that their slots were pretty damn good, so they went back to this thing, and this fitted perfectly. Now, what I realized as soon as I saw this beastie, I bought some of these immediately, and I started making a custom built bass for it, which I don't have kicking around just a second, but and I've made various different versions. This one is made out of milliput, which is hard but not the best material in the world. I've since then I now use Plast Aid, which is a very hard resin but a controllable resin that you can work with. So basically I make some resin up, work it until it's soft, and I set this nut in that with WD-40 and sometimes some cling film to make sure it separates perfectly. When it's set, this comes out of the mould, and you've got a blob with a perfect imprint of this underside, and then I shape the whole thing to fit the custom guitar. Again, this isn't a perfect fit, but this is a very early one, but this is on one of my prototypes. So what you get is an infinitely adjustable Tusq nut set to the lowest, or up and down. You can go to wherever you want depending on how you like to play and so on. You get it adjustable. The beauty of it is you get this perfect first fret action, and you get the original unsullied nut slots created by the geniuses at Graph Tec. Okay, so that's why this is such a great innovation. So I kept explaining this to folks who are interested in setups, and I thought I might as well make a video that shows it, so that instead of kind of writing it out every time, I would show you, give you a link to this video. Now, what I find is I used to offer this as an additional, or an added thing to the setup. This unit here costs about 15 quid with postage, so I charge 25 quid in all, which is a tenner for the Plast Aid material, which is quite expensive actually, but the time for working this down to the perfect fit for whichever guitar it's going on. So I tend to find that I don't really even want to offer it as an option anymore. I think I've just basically increased the price of the setup to include this, because I have this on all my 3-a-side guitars, and it's fundamental to how well they all play. I can still achieve a pretty good effect with a standard nut and very, very careful work, but what you don't get is the perfect tuning stability that this thing gives you, obviously in conjunction with stretching out your strings thoroughly too. That's the other half of the tuning stability equation, but once you get that right, this bit takes care of it. So I just think for pound, the biggest transformation of all is at this end with this nut and this first fret action. Then the next one is the level frets and the low action that you can then get at this end as a result of careful precision fret leveling. So this is now part of it, and I'm kind of only going to go back to old-fashioned nuts by exception in cases where somebody has a particular, let's say they want a black graphite nut very specifically. I'll do that, but this is the standard now. So that's why as I say, I've changed all my guitars to it, and I wouldn't go backwards myself. This thing, I pick it up every time I pick it up, it's in perfect tune, and it plays for the whole session in perfect tune, so why would I bother changing it? So there you go, the adjustable Tusq nut from Reloved Guitars. I wonder if I had one here. Let's show you my little pot of bits and bobs. I'm sure there'll be a bass unit somewhere. Okay, look, there's an example of a bass unit waiting to be shaved down to size. This is in the Plast Aid material, and it's quite a lot of material taken up to get it right. Here's an example of one sitting, oops, you can't see on there. There's an example of one in its little, this isn't one I used, but you can sort of see how they fit. Oh, look at that, one-handed. They fit together, and once you get them fit together, then that has to obviously fit for the slot you're putting it into. But that's the basic principle, and thanks to good old Graph Tec Tusk for coming up with the idea. Here's an older milliput version. As you can probably hear, it's very hard, and it actually does the job really well. It's never proved a problem on any of the guitars I've put it on, but I kind of like the plastic one better. So there you go. That's my 10 minutes up. Thank you for sticking with it.